The piercing screech of tearing metal echoed through the forest as the Xindi starship plummeted from the sky. 12-year-old Randy Scora's head snapped up, his eyes wide as he watched the alien vessel slam into the earth less than a mile from his family's settlement. The impact shook the ground, sending birds scattering from the trees in panic. Randy's heart raced as he sprinted towards his house. The entire settlement buzzed with activity, adults emerging from their homes with looks of fear and confusion. Randy's father, a tall man with weathered hands, grabbed his son's shoulder as he approached. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice stern. "We don't know what we're dealing with." But Randy couldn't shake the feeling that someone might be hurt. As the adults gathered to debate their next move, he slipped away, his curiosity and concern overpowering his father's command. The forest was dense, but Randy knew these woods like the back of his hand. He navigated through the underbrush, the acrid smell of smoke growing stronger with each step. Finally, he broke through the tree line into a freshly carved clearing. The Xindi ship lay before him, its sleek hull crumpled and torn. Sparks flew from exposed wiring, and a puddle of iridescent fuel spread beneath the wreckage. Randy's eyes darted across the scene, searching for signs of life. That's when he saw her, a young Xindi female, her purple skin marred with cuts and bruises. She was pinned beneath a section of the ship's hull, her eyes wide with fear and pain. Randy's breath caught in his throat as he realized the danger she was in. The leaking fuel was inching closer to the electrical fires, and it was only a matter of time before the whole thing went up in flames. Without hesitation, Randy scrambled towards the ship. He could hear the adults from his settlement approaching in the distance, but he knew there wasn't time to wait. As he reached the Xindi girl, her alien features contorted in a mix of pain and surprise. "I'm here to help," Randy said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. He wedged his shoulder under the piece of hull trapping her, straining with all his might. The metal groaned, then shifted just enough for the Xindi to wriggle free. Randy grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the wreckage. They had barely made it 10 feet when the ship erupted in a ball of flame, the force of the explosion knocking them both to the ground. As the heat washed over them, Randy used his body to shield the alien girl from flying debris. When the initial blast subsided, Randy helped the Xindi to her feet. She stared at him, her large, multifaceted eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "I'm Randy," he said, supporting her weight as she limped away from the burning wreckage. "What's your name?" "Craxon," she replied, her voice melodic despite her obvious pain. "Why did you risk yourself for me? You are but a child." Before Randy could answer, the group from the settlement burst into the clearing, led by his father. Their expressions ranged from shock to anger as they took in the scene. A human boy supporting an injured alien, with the remains of a spaceship burning behind them. "Randy, get away from it!" his father shouted, reaching for his son. But Randy stood his ground, positioning himself between Craxon and the approaching adults. "She needs help," he said firmly. "She's hurt and scared, just like any of us would be." As the adults argued about what to do with the alien visitor, Randy tended to Craxon's wounds as best he could. He could see the confusion in her eyes, the struggle to understand why a young human would put himself in harm's way for her. Little did they know, high above the Earth's atmosphere, a Xindi rescue ship had picked up Craxon's distress signal. As it sped towards the planet, the stage was set for a momentous first contact, one that would challenge the beliefs and limits of both humans and Xindi alike. And at the center of it all stood Randy Scora, a 12-year-old boy whose act of bravery would become the catalyst for an interstellar drama that was only just beginning. The days following Craxon's rescue were a whirlwind of activity in the small settlement. Randy, who had just celebrated his 13th birthday, found himself at the center of a growing storm. His father, John Scora, had become the unlikely champion of Craxon's protection, arguing passionately for her right to safety and care. "She's not a threat," John insisted during a heated town meeting. "She's injured, alone, and in need of our help. This is our chance to show that humanity can be compassionate, even to those from beyond our world." But not everyone shared John's perspective. Marcus Holt, the settlement's head of security, stood at the opposite end of the spectrum. His voice boomed through the community center. "We have no idea what kind of danger this alien poses. For all we know, It could be the advanced scout for an invasion force. Randy watched from the back of the room as the adults argued, their voices rising and falling like waves in a storm. He thought of Craxon, resting in their home, her purple skin slowly healing from the crash. The alien girl had become more than just a curiosity to him. She was a friend. As the debate raged on, Randy slipped out of the meeting and made his way home. He found Craxon sitting up in bed, her multifaceted eyes taking in the room with wonder. "How are you feeling?" Randy asked, pulling up a chair beside her. Craxon turned to him, her melodic voice tinged with pain but filled with curiosity. "Better, thanks to you and your family, but I don't understand. Why are some of your people so afraid of me?" Randy sighed, trying to find the right words. "It's complicated. Humans, we've never met aliens before. Some people are excited, but others are scared of what they don't know." Over the next few days, as Craxon's strength returned, she began to share stories of her homeworld with Randy and his family. Her descriptions of towering crystal cities and seas of living metal left them awestruck. In return, Randy taught her about Earth customs, from the simple joy of roasting marshmallows to the complexities of human emotions. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Craxon asked, "What is this feeling when you care about someone who isn't family?" Randy smiled. "That's friendship, Craxon. It's when you choose to care about someone." Her eyes widened with understanding. "We don't have a word for that in my language. Our social structures are different." As Craxon shared more about Xindi technology, word spread through the settlement. Marcus Holt seized upon this, using it to stoke fears among the populace. "They're gathering intelligence," he warned at another town meeting. "Every bit of information we give them could be used against us." John Scora stood to counter him, but Randy could see the toll the constant arguments were taking on his father. Dark circles had formed under John's eyes, and his shoulders sagged with the weight of his self-appointed role as Craxon's protector. The tension in the settlement grew palpable. Randy noticed more and more people eyeing their homes suspiciously. Patrols, organized by Holt, began circling their property at all hours. One night, Randy was awakened by the sound of their dog, Max, barking furiously. He sat up, heart pounding, as he heard the crunch of footsteps outside his window. Grabbing his emergency radio, he raced to Craxon's room. "We have to go," he whispered urgently, helping her to her feet. "Holt's coming for you." They moved silently through the house, Randy leading Craxon to the hidden cellar exit his father had shown him years ago, just in case. As they emerged into the cool night air, shouts erupted from the front of the house. "This way," Randy urged, guiding Craxon into the dense forest that bordered their property. Behind them, flashlight beams cut through the darkness, accompanied by angry voices. They ran until their lungs burned, the sounds of pursuit fading into the distance. As they paused to catch their breath, Randy's radio crackled to life. "Randy," his father's voice came through, strained and breathless. "Are you safe?" "We're okay, Dad," Randy replied. "What's happening?" "Holt's arrested me. Don't come back, son. Keep Craxon safe. I'll find you when I can." The radio went silent, leaving Randy and Craxon alone in the vast dark forest. Randy felt a mix of fear and tenacity coursing through him. He looked at Craxon, her alien features etched with concern in the moonlight. "What do we do now?" she asked softly. Randy took a deep breath, recalling all the outdoor skills his father had taught him over the years. "We keep moving. I know these woods. We'll find a safe place to rest, then figure out our next move." As dawn broke, they found shelter in a small cave hidden behind a waterfall. Randy gathered berries and edible plants he recognized, but he noticed Craxon barely touched the food. "What's wrong?" he asked. Craxon hesitated before responding. "My body, it requires specific nutrients not found in Earth's ecosystem. I can sustain myself for a while, but..." Randy understood the unspoken urgency. They needed to find a way to contact Craxon's people, and soon. As the sun climbed higher, they heard the distant thrum of helicopter rotors. The government had arrived, no doubt alerted by Holt's faction. Randy knew their situation had just become far more complicated. In orbit above Earth, Captain Zax of the Xindi rescue ship paced the bridge, torn between his duty to recover Kraxon and the strict non-intervention protocols that govern Xindi interactions with pre-contact species. "Captain," his second-in-command reported, "we're detecting increased military activity in the area of Kraxon's last known position." Zax's facial tentacles writhed with agitation. "Prepare a stealth insertion team," he ordered. "We may need to risk a covert extraction." Back on Earth, Randy and Kraxon continued their journey deeper into the forest, each step taking them further from the life Randy had known and into an uncertain future. As they navigated the dense underbrush, Randy found himself drawing on every bit of knowledge his father had imparted, determined to keep his alien friends safe. Kraxon watched Randy with growing admiration. "I never imagined humans could be so adaptable," she admitted. "Our initial assessments of your species may have been flawed." Randy managed a small smile despite their dire circumstances. "Maybe that's the real lesson here. We all have a lot to learn about each other." As they crested a hill, the vast expanse of the forest spread out before them. Somewhere out there lay safety, answers, and the promise of a new understanding between their two species. But first, they had to survive the challenges that lay ahead, their unlikely friendship put to the ultimate test. As dawn broke, casting long shadows through the dense forest, Randy and Kraxon pressed on. Their feet ached from hours of walking, and exhaustion tugged at their limbs. Randy's stomach growled, reminding him that their meager supplies of foraged berries and plants were long gone. "We need to find shelter soon," Randy said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Somewhere we can rest and regroup." Kraxon nodded, her multifaceted eyes scanning the terrain ahead. Suddenly she froze, pointing to a structure barely visible through the trees. "Look, Randy, is that one of your human dwellings?" Randy squinted, his heart leaping as he recognized the outline of a small building. "It's a ranger station. Come on, let's check it out." They approached cautiously, Randy's ears straining for any sound of pursuit. The station stood silent and empty, its windows dark. A layer of dust and fallen leaves on the porch suggested it hadn't been used in some time. Randy tested the door, finding it locked. He searched around the building, finally locating a key hidden under a fake rock, a trick his father had once shown him. The door creaked open, revealing a musty interior filled with cobwebs. "It's not much, but it'll do," Randy said, ushering Kraxon inside. He quickly secured the door behind them and began exploring the small space. To his delight, Randy discovered a cache of supplies in a storage closet. He emerged with an armful of items, setting them on a rickety table. "Look at this, a first aid kit, water purification tablets, even some canned food. We hit the jackpot, Kraxon." While Kraxon rested on a worn sofa, Randy got to work. He used the first aid kit to clean and redress her wounds, his fingers gentle as he applied antiseptic to the cuts on her purple skin. "How's that feel?" he asked, securing the last bandage. Kraxon flexed her arm, wincing slightly. "Better. Thank you, Randy. Your skills continue to impress me." Randy managed a tired smile. "Now for some security. We need to know if anyone's coming." He slipped outside, gathering fallen branches and using some fishing line he'd found to create a crude perimeter alarm. Tin cans from their newly acquired food supply completed the setup, ready to rattle at the slightest disturbance. As Randy worked miles away, Colonel James Hartley stood in a mobile command center, his eyes fixed on a bank of monitors. Thermal imaging drones buzzed overhead, their feeds painting the forest in eerie shades of green and yellow. "Sector 7 clear, sir," a technician reported. "Moving to Sector 8. Hartley nodded, his mind focused in unyielding commitment. "They're out there somewhere. Keep searching." Back in the settlement, John Scora paced the small cell where he was being held. The door opened, and Officer Michael Chen entered, his eyes darting nervously. "Any news?" John asked, his voice low. Chen shook his head. "Nothing concrete, but I spoke with your wife. She's gathering support among the other settlers. There are more people on your side than you might think." John sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We need to get word to Randy somehow. Let him know he's not alone." As they spoke, high above the Earth's atmosphere, Captain Zax made a decision that would change everything. "Launch the probe," he ordered, his facial tentacles twitching with tension. Stealth protocols engaged. Find Kraxon. The probe detached from the Xindi ship, a sleek, almost invisible object, no larger than a baseball. It streaked through the atmosphere, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it undetectable to Earth's radar systems. Hours passed. In the ranger station, Randy noticed Kraxon's condition worsening. Her breathing had become labored, and her skin had taken on a sickly pallor. "Kraxon, what's wrong?" Randy asked, kneeling beside her. She opened her eyes, struggling to focus on him. "My body, it needs a specific mineral. Without it, my systems are shutting down." Randy's mind raced, recalling their earlier conversations about Xindi physiology. "Wait, you mentioned something about this mineral being similar to components in some of our technology, right?" Kraxon nodded weakly. "Yes, but where would we find such technology here?" Randy's eyes lit up as he remembered something. "The communications relay station. I saw it on a map in here earlier. It's not far. If I can get there, I might be able to find what you need." Despite Kraxon's protests, Randy knew he had to try. He waited until nightfall, then slipped out of the ranger station, leaving Kraxon hidden inside. The forest was alive with night sounds as Randy made his way through the darkness. He moved as quietly as possible, every snapping twig setting his nerves on edge. Finally, he reached the perimeter fence of the relay station. Randy's small size worked to his advantage as he squeezed through a gap in the fence. Heart pounding, he crept towards the main building. The door was locked, but a partially open window provided an entrance. Inside, Randy found himself surrounded by blinking lights and humming equipment. He began searching frantically, opening panels and examining components. Time seemed to stretch as he worked, the fear of discovery a constant presence in the back of his mind. Finally, he found what he was looking for, a set of circuit boards that matched Kraxon's description. As he removed them, his elbow knocked against a console. A small red light began blinking silently. Unaware of the alarm he'd triggered, Randy hurried back to the ranger station, the precious components clutched to his chest. He burst through the door, startling Kraxon. "I got them!" he exclaimed, rushing to her side. "What do we do now?" Working together, they began the delicate process of extracting the mineral Kraxon needed. Randy followed her instructions carefully, using tools from the station to break down the components. As Kraxon's strength returned, the situation outside grew more precarious. Colonel Hartley, alerted to the break-in at the relay station, redirected his forces. Thermal imaging drones zeroed in on the ranger station, detecting the heat signatures inside. At the military's forward operating base, Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived, her expertise in xenobiology making her a valuable asset. She wasted no time in challenging the aggressive approach being taken. "We're dealing with a sentient being here," she argued, facing down Colonel Hartley. "We need to establish peaceful contact, not treat this like a military operation." Hartley's face reddened. "With all due respect, Doctor, we have no idea what kind of threat this alien poses. My job is to neutralize potential dangers." As they argued, the Xindi probe finally locked onto Kraxon's location. Captain Zax received the information, his crew watching him expectantly. "Prepare for extraction," Zax ordered, then hesitated. "But hold for my command. We need to time this perfectly." In the ranger station, Randy and Kraxon froze as they heard the distant sound of vehicles approaching. Their eyes met, a mixture of fear and dedication reflected in both human and alien gazes. "They're coming," Randy whispered, his mind racing for a plan. "We need to move now." Outside, military vehicles converged on the station. Dr. Rodriguez, having insisted on accompanying the operation, watched with growing anxiety. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of human compassion, alien trust, and the delicate balance of first contact. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in pale hues as Randy and Kraxon burst out of the ranger station. The distant rumble of vehicles spurred them into action. "This way," Randy whispered, guiding Kraxon towards the denser part of the forest. They moved swiftly, ducking under low-hanging branches and skirting around thorny bushes. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Shouts echoed through the trees, accompanied by the crackling of radios and the thud of heavy boots on forest floor. Randy's mind raced as he led Craxon through the undergrowth. His father's lessons on wilderness survival played on loop in his head. Find water, cover your tracks, use the terrain to your advantage. They reached a swift-flowing river, its waters churning over moss-covered rocks. Randy spotted a fallen tree stretching across the water. "We can use this to cross," he said, stepping onto the log. "It'll throw them off our trail." Craxon followed, her alien physiology granting her unexpected balance. They inched across, the roar of the river below drowning out the sounds of pursuit. As they reached the other side, Randy's foot slipped. He teetered on the edge, arms windmilling. Craxon's hands shot out, steadying him. "Thanks," Randy breathed, heart pounding. They pressed on, the terrain growing steeper. A sheer cliff face loomed before them. "We have to climb," Randy said, eyeing the rocky surface. "It's our best chance to lose them." Craxon nodded, her multifaceted eyes reflecting persistence. They began their ascent, fingers grasping at small crevices, feet finding precarious footholds. Halfway up, a rock gave way under Randy's hand. He slipped, a cry escaping his lips. Craxon reacted instantly, her arms stretching to an impossible length, wrapping around Randy's waist and steadying him. Randy stared at her, wide-eyed. "You never mentioned you could do that." Craxon's skin shifted colors, a sign Randy had come to recognize as embarrassment. It didn't seem relevant before. They reached the top, both panting from exertion. The forest stretched out below them, a sea of green hiding their pursuers from view. Miles away at the military's forward operating base, Dr. Elena Rodriguez strode into the command center, her lab coat billowing behind her. Colonel Hartley looked up from a map, his brow furrowed. "Dr. Rodriguez," he acknowledged curtly, "I hope you're here to assist, not obstruct." Elena's eyes flashed. "I'm here to prevent a catastrophe, Colonel. We're on the brink of first contact, and you're treating it like a military operation." Hartley's face hardened. "That first contact you're so excited about could be the prelude to an invasion. My job is to protect this country. And my job is to facilitate understanding," Elena shot back. "These beings traveled across the galaxy. If they meant us harm, we'd know it by now." Their argument drew the attention of nearby personnel. Some nodded in agreement with Elena, while others stood firmly behind Hartley. The rift in the operation was becoming apparent. Back in the settlement, John Scora emerged from his cell, blinking in the morning light. Officer Chen stood nearby, surrounded by a group of determined-looking settlers. "We've got about 20 volunteers," Chen reported. "All of them know these woods like the back of their hand." John nodded, scanning the faces of his impromptu search party. "Let's move out. We need to find Randy and his friend before the military does." The group set off, following old hunting trails and long-forgotten paths. Their knowledge of the local terrain allowed them to make swift progress, covering ground the military vehicles couldn't reach. High above the Earth's surface, Captain Zax made his decision. "Launch the shuttle," he ordered, his facial tentacles rippling with tension. "Lyra, you know your mission. Extract Craxon, but avoid conflict at all costs." The sleek Xindi shuttle detached from the main ship, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to Earth's detection systems. Lyra piloted the craft with practiced ease, her forearms working in perfect synchronization across the control panels. As the shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere, Randy and Craxon stumbled upon the entrance to an old mining tunnel. Exhausted and desperate for shelter, they ventured inside. "This could buy us some time," Randy said, his voice echoing in the dark passage. They moved deeper into the tunnel, using the light from Randy's scavenged flashlight to navigate. The air grew thick with dust and the musty scent of decay. Suddenly, a low rumble filled the air. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble. "Randy," Craxon said, her voice tight with fear, "I believe this structure is unstable." Before Randy could respond, a deafening crack split the air. Rocks and debris rained down around them. Randy grabbed Craxon's hand, pulling her close as the world collapsed around them. When the dust settled, they found themselves trapped. A wall of fallen rock blocked the way they had come, and darkness stretched out before them. Randy's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the tunnel walls. "Are you okay?" he asked, turning to Craxon. She nodded, though Randy could see she was weakening. The mineral treatment they had cobbled together at the ranger station was wearing off. "We need to find a way out," Randy said, forcing confidence into his voice. He began examining the tunnel, searching for any sign of an alternate exit. Outside, the tremors from the cave-in rippled through the forest floor. John Scora's search party felt the ground shake beneath their feet. "Did you feel that?" one of the settlers asked, looking around nervously. John's eyes widened with realization. The old mines, they must have gone into the tunnels. He turned to the group, his voice urgent. "Change of plans. We need to find the mine entrances. Now!" Miles away, Colonel Hartley received the seismic report. "Deploy the drilling equipment," he barked into his radio. "We're going in." Dr. Rodriguez watched in horror as the military convoy rumbled to life. "Colonel, wait! You could cause further cave-ins. We need a more delicate approach." But Hartley was already striding away, leaving Elena standing alone, her mind racing to find a solution. In the cloaked Xindi shuttle, Lyra's instruments pinged. She had detected Kraxon's life signs, faint but present, emanating from beneath the earth. As Lyra guided her shuttle to a clearing near the mine entrance, she spotted a solitary figure moving through the trees. It was Dr. Rodriguez, who had split from the military group to conduct her own search. Lyra hesitated, her orders clear about avoiding contact, but as she watched the human woman examine the mine entrance with scientific precision, she made a decision that would alter the course of events. Inside the tunnel, Randy worked tirelessly. He had managed to create a makeshift air filtration system using materials scavenged from the old mining equipment. It wasn't perfect, but it would buy them time. Kraxon watched him work, her alien features softening with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "Randy," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." Randy paused, turning to face her. In the dim light of the failing flashlight, their eyes met, human and alien, yet filled with the same mix of fear, hope, and something deeper neither dared to name. Outside the mine, multiple forces converged. The military's drills whirred to life. Scora's search party combed the area for hidden entrances, and Lyra approached Dr. Rodriguez, her cloaking device shimmering as she revealed herself. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shape the future of human-alien relations. As the drilling intensified and the search parties closed in, Randy and Kraxon huddled together in the darkness, unaware of the forces rushing to reach them, each with their own agenda. The next few moments would test the limits of trust, cooperation, and understanding between species. The fate of two individuals trapped underground would become the catalyst for Earth's first official contact with an alien civilization. The mine rumbled ominously as Randy and Kraxon pressed deeper into the dark tunnels. Each tremor sent cascades of dust and small rocks showering down around them, a grim reminder of their precarious situation. "We need to move," Randy said, his voice tight with urgency. "The vibrations are getting stronger." Kraxon nodded, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the dim light of Randy's failing flashlight. They stumbled forward, the uneven ground treacherous beneath their feet. As they rounded a bend, Randy's foot caught on something. He stooped to examine it, his hands running over cold metal. "Old mining equipment," he muttered, an idea forming in his mind. Working quickly, Randy gathered discarded cables and hooks. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, knotting and weaving the materials into a makeshift rope. "This should help us navigate the trickier passages," he explained to Kraxon, who watched with fascination. They pressed on, using Randy's improvised rope to traverse steeper inclines and cross gaps in the tunnel floor. The deeper they went, the damper the air became, heavy with the scent of stagnant water. Meanwhile, on the surface, John Scora's search party had made a crucial discovery. Sarah, one of the local hunters, called out excitedly, "Over here! I think I've found something!" The group converged on her location, where a rusted grate was barely visible beneath years of overgrowth. John's eyes lit up with recognition. "It's an old ventilation shaft. This could lead straight into the mine." They set to work immediately, clearing away debris and vegetation. The task was arduous, but the knowledge that it might be Randy's only chance spurred them on. Miles away, in a clearing near the mine entrance, an unlikely partnership was forming. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood face-to-face with Lyra, the Shindy operative, her initial shock giving way to scientific curiosity. "Your scanning technology," Elena breathed, eyes wide as she examined the alien device. "It's incredible. Can you locate Randy and Craxon?" Lyra nodded, her forearms working in concert across the device's interface. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the mine system. Two dots pulsed deep within the labyrinth of tunnels. "They're moving away from the drilling site," Elena observed, her brow furrowing, "and towards... oh no." Lyra followed her gaze, her alien features tensing. "A flooded section," she confirmed. "We must act quickly." At the military's forward operating base, Colonel Hartley's patience had worn thin. "Bring in the heavy equipment," he barked into his radio. "I want those two found now." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Chen, stepped forward hesitantly. "Sir, with respect, the larger drills could cause significant damage to the mine structure. We could be putting the targets at risk." Hartley's face reddened. "Are you questioning my orders, Lieutenant?" The tension in the command center was palpable as other officers exchanged uneasy glances. The operation was beginning to fracture under the weight of conflicting priorities. Deep in the mine, Randy and Craxon faced a new challenge. A rush of water surged around a corner, threatening to sweep them off their feet. Randy's mind raced, scanning their surroundings for anything useful. His eyes landed on a row of old mining carts. "Quick!" he shouted to Craxon. "Help me move these!" Together, they maneuvered the heavy carts into position, creating a makeshift dam. The water pooled behind it, rising steadily but no longer rushing towards them. Catching his breath, Randy turned to Craxon. He was struck by the look of admiration in her alien eyes. "Your ability to adapt," Craxon said softly. "It's remarkable. My people could learn much from humans like you." Randy felt a warmth spread through his chest, despite the chill of the damp mine. "Tell me about your world," he said, as they continued their journey through the tunnels. "What's it like where you come from?" As they walked, Craxon shared stories of her home planet, tales of crystal cities that sang in the wind, of creatures that could phase through solid matter, of a society built on the principles of cosmic harmony. Randy listened, enraptured, his own problems momentarily forgotten in the face of these wonders. Their conversation was cut short as they stumbled into a large open chamber. Rusted equipment lined the walls, and a control panel flickered weakly in the center of the room. "An old control room," Randy muttered, hope rising in his chest. He approached the panel, fingers dancing across the dusty buttons and switches. Drawing on memories of his father's work, he began to coax life back into the ancient system. Lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. A screen sputtered to life, displaying a schematic of the mine. "We have power," Randy said, a grin spreading across his face. "And more importantly, we have maps." As Randy studied the schematics, an idea began to form. He turned to the control panel, repurposing old equipment to create a series of rhythmic vibrations. "It's an old distress code," he explained to Craxon. "If anyone up there knows their mining history, they might recognize it." On the surface, the various groups began to detect the unusual tremors. Dr. Rodriguez was the first to recognize the pattern, her eyes widening with realization. "Colonel," she called out to Hartley, who was overseeing the drilling operation, "you need to stop the drills. I think they're trying to communicate with us." Hartley hesitated, torn between his mission parameters and the potential breakthrough. Finally, he gave the order to cease drilling. As the heavy machinery ground to a halt, John Scora's group, closer to the source of the vibrations, began to decipher the pattern. "It's an SOS," John realized, his voice thick with emotion. "An old mining distress code. Randy's alive down there, and he's asking for help." Lyra, observing the humans' efforts to interpret the signal, found herself re-evaluating her mission. The ingenuity and persistence displayed by these beings were unlike anything she had encountered before. As the groups on the surface began to coordinate their rescue efforts, a new crisis emerged deep in the mine. Randy noticed Craxon's breathing becoming labored, her movements slower and less coordinated. "Craxon," he said, alarm clear in his voice, "what's wrong?" The atmosphere, she managed to gasp out. My body, it's not adapting as well as we hoped. Randy's mind raced. They were running out of time. He turned back to the control panel, desperately searching for a way to establish two-way communication with the surface. As he worked, he could hear Craxton's breathing growing more strained. The bond between them, forged in the depths of the earth, pushed him to work faster, to find a solution before it was too late. Above ground, the various factions prepared to launch a coordinated rescue effort. But tensions remained high, each group acutely aware of their own agendas and the potential consequences of this first contact scenario. In the control room, Randy's fingers flew across the panel, jury-rigging connections and repurposing old tech. He was in a race against time, fighting to save Craxton while also trying to guide their rescuers. The fate of not just two individuals, but potentially two species, hung in the balance as the rescue operation began in earnest. The control room hummed with activity as Randy's fingers danced across the antiquated panel, his mind racing to find a solution. Craxton's labored breathing spurred him on, each raspy inhale a stark reminder of their dwindling time. Suddenly, a spark of inspiration hit Randy. He eyed the old mining equipment lining the walls, his gaze settling on a pile of discarded circuit boards and wiring. That's it, he muttered, diving towards the heap of electronic detritus. With nimble fingers, he began to salvage components, stripping wires and reconnecting circuits. Craxton watched in fascination as Randy worked, her alien features contorted in a mix of pain and curiosity. "What are you doing?" she managed to ask between labored breaths. Randy didn't look up from his work, his voice tight with concentration. "Boosting our signal. If I can amplify the output, we might be able to reach the surface with more clarity." As he spoke, he connected the final wire to the control panel. The makeshift device sputtered to life, emitting a high-pitched whine that echoed through the chamber. Randy adjusted a few dials and the noise settled into a steady pulse. Come on, he whispered, his eyes fixed on the flickering display. Suddenly, the screen lit up with a burst of activity. "Yes," Randy exclaimed, pumping his fist in triumph. "We've got a stronger signal. They should be able to pinpoint our location now." His moment of jubilation was cut short by a sudden fit of coughing from Craxton. Randy turned to see her slumped against the wall, her breathing more labored than ever. Alarm coursed through him as he rushed to her side. "Craxton, what's wrong?" he asked, supporting her with his arm. She looked at him with pain-filled eyes. "The air, it's becoming toxic to me. My body can't process the high levels of carbon dioxide." Randy's mind raced, recalling the information Craxton had shared about her physiology during their journey through the tunnels. He scanned the room, his gaze landing on a stack of old mining lamps in the corner. "Hold on," he said, squeezing Craxton's shoulder reassuringly. "I have an idea." Randy dashed to the lamps, prying them open to extract the activated charcoal filters inside. He gathered an assortment of tubes and containers from around the room, working feverishly to construct a makeshift air filtration system. "This should help remove some of the carbon dioxide," he explained as he worked. "It's not perfect, but it might buy us some time." As Randy put the finishing touches on his improvised device, a crackle of static filled the room. A voice, faint but discernible, emanated from the control panel. "You read? This is Dr. Rodriguez. Randy, can you hear us?" Randy's heart leaped as he rushed to the panel. Yes, we can hear you," he shouted into the microphone. "Thank goodness," Elena's voice came through clearer now. "We've triangulated your position. A rescue team is on its way. What's your status?" Randy glanced at Craxton, who was now breathing easier thanks to the makeshift filter. "We're alive, but Craxton is in trouble. The air down here is toxic to her. We need to get out fast." As Randy relayed the information about Craxton's condition, the atmosphere on the surface shifted. Colonel Hartley, listening to the exchange, felt the weight of the situation bearing down on him. He turned to Dr. Rodriguez, his expression grim but resolute. "Doctor, what do you need to make this rescue happen?" Elena's eyes widened at the colonel's change in demeanor. She quickly outlined a plan, emphasizing the need for a joint effort. To her surprise, Hartley nodded in agreement. "All right, let's make it happen," he said, turning to address the assembled teams. "This is now a joint rescue operation. I want all resources pooled and every available hand on deck. As the surface teams mobilized, John Scora's group made a breakthrough at the old ventilation shaft. They had finally cleared enough debris to open a small passage. "We've got access," John called out, his voice echoing down the shaft. "Lowering supplies and a comm device now." Back in the mine, Randy and Craxon huddled around the control panel, listening intently to the updates from the surface. The news of the coordinated rescue effort filled them with hope, but the sound of trickling water in the distance served as a grim reminder of their predicament. Randy was about to respond when a loud crack reverberated through the chamber. A stream of water burst through a fissure in the wall, quickly growing in intensity. "We've got a problem," Randy shouted into the microphone. "Water's coming in fast. We need to move to higher ground." He helped Craxon to her feet, supporting her as they made their way out of the control room. The communication device crackled behind them, Elena's voice growing fainter as they moved away. "Randy, wait. We're sending down static aux escape pod in the static aux launch mechanism." The rest of the message was lost as they stumbled into the corridor, the rising water lapping at their heels. Randy's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragmented information. Escape pod? Launch mechanism? As they rounded a corner, Randy's flashlight beam fell upon a large cylindrical object, partially hidden behind some fallen rocks. His eyes widened in recognition. "Craxon, look!" he exclaimed, pointing at the object. "It's an emergency escape pod. This could be our way out." They approached the pod, hope rising in their chests, but as Randy examined it more closely, his heart sank. The launching mechanism was badly damaged, and years of disuse had taken their toll on the pod's structure. Water continued to rise around them as Randy assessed the damage. He glanced at Craxon, seeing the trust and hope in her alien eyes. In that moment, he made a decision. "We can fix this," he said, tenacity etched in his voice. "It won't be easy, but it's our best shot." As Randy set to work on the escape pod, cannibalizing parts from their communication device and scavenging materials from the surrounding area, the rescue operation on the surface kicked into high gear. Colonel Hartley oversaw the positioning of the drilling equipment, while Lyra, the Xindi operative, calibrated her advanced scanning technology. Dr. Rodriguez stood ready, monitoring the biological readings they were receiving from the mine. The air thrummed with tension as human and Xindi technology worked in tandem, carving a path through the earth. The fate of two individuals, and potentially two species, hung in the balance as the rescue shaft inched closer to its target. In the flooded mine, Randy worked tirelessly on the escape pod, his hands moving with desperate speed. Craxon assisted as best she could, her conditions stabilized but still precarious. As the water level reached their chests, Randy made the final connections in the pod's circuitry. He helped Craxon inside, his heart pounding as he sealed the hatch behind them. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, activating the launch sequence. The pod rumbled to life, ancient machinery groaning under the strain. At that same moment, the rescue team's drill broke through the final layer of rock, a beam of light piercing the darkness of the mine. As the escape pod began its uncertain journey upward and the rescue team peered into the flooded chamber, the two paths of rescue converged. The next few moments would determine not just the fate of Randy and Craxon, but the future of human-Xindi relations. The pod shuddered and creaked as it accelerated, pushing through layers of rock and soil. Randy held onto Craxon, both of them bracing for impact or malfunction. Outside, the rescue team watched in awe as the ground bulged and cracked, the escape pod emerging like a mechanical whale breaching the surface. The earth shook as the escape pod burst through the newly drilled tunnel, its metal shell groaning under the immense pressure. Colonel Hartley and Lyra stumbled back as the pod shot out of the ground, landing with a resounding thud on the muddied soil. The rescue team sprang into action, swarming around the battered pod. Its exterior was scorched and dented, bearing the scars of its harrowing journey through the Earth's crust. Colonel Hartley barked orders as team members worked to secure the pod, their hands flying over the ancient mechanisms. "Get that hatch open," Hartley commanded, his voice tight with urgency. Dr. Rodriguez stood at the ready, her medical kit open and equipment prepared. The air crackled with tension as the team worked to pry open the pod's hatch. With a hiss of escaping air, the seal broke, and the hatch swung open. Inside, Randy and Craxton lay motionless, their bodies intertwined in the cramped space. The team moved swiftly, carefully extracting the pair and laying them on stretchers. Dr. Rodriguez immediately began assessing their vital signs, her practiced hands moving with precision. Randy's eyes fluttered open first, his consciousness returning in a rush of sensory input. The bright sunlight, the cool air on his skin, the cacophony of voices around him, it was overwhelming. His first coherent thought was of his alien companion. "Craxton," he croaked, his voice hoarse. "Where's Craxton? Is she okay?" Dr. Rodriguez leaned over him, her face etched with concern. "We're taking care of her, Randy. Just try to relax." But Randy couldn't relax. He turned his head, searching for Craxton. He saw her on the adjacent stretcher, her alien features slack and unresponsive. Dr. Rodriguez moved to Craxton's side, her expression growing more worried as she checked the Cindy's vital signs. "Her physiology is struggling with our atmosphere," Dr. Rodriguez announced, her voice tense. "We need to stabilize her quickly." Lyra stepped forward, her Xindi features set in commitment. In her hand she held a small, intricate device. "This may help," she said, her voice carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "It's a Xindi medical stabilizer. It should help her adapt to Earth's atmosphere, at least temporarily." Colonel Hartley hesitated for a moment, his military training warring with the immediate need to save a life. With a curt nod, he gave his approval. Lyra activated the device, holding it over Craxton's prone form. A soft blue light emanated from it, enveloping the unconscious Xindi. The team watched in tense silence as Craxton's breathing gradually steadied, her vital signs stabilizing. As Craxton's condition improved, the full magnitude of what had just transpired began to sink in. News helicopters circled overhead, their cameras capturing every moment of the dramatic rescue. Reporters at the perimeter of the site were already broadcasting live updates, their voices filled with excitement and disbelief. John Scora pushed through the crowd, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and hope. When he saw Randy on the stretcher, alive and conscious, he let out a choked sob of relief. He rushed to his son's side, gripping Randy's hand tightly. "Dad," Randy said weakly, a small smile forming on his lips. "We made it." John nodded, unable to speak through his emotions. As he stood there holding his son's hand, he became acutely aware of the cameras trained on them. In that moment, overcome by the enormity of what had happened, John found his voice. He turned to face the cameras, his face streaked with tears, but his eyes blazing with conviction. "Look at what my son has done," he said, his voice carrying across the now silent rescue site. "He risked everything to save Craxton, to bridge the gap between our species. This is what humanity is capable of: compassion, bravery, and cooperation in the face of the unknown." His words, broadcast live across the globe, struck a chord with millions of viewers. Social media exploded with reactions, the hashtag #HumanityUnited trending worldwide within minutes. As John spoke, activity in Earth's orbit increased. Captain Zax, monitoring the situation from the Xindi ship, made a decision that would alter the course of human history. The ship's communication officer sent a message to Earth's governments, requesting permission to land and retrieve Craxton. But this was more than a simple extraction. Captain Zax offered to open formal diplomatic channels between Earth and the Xindi civilization in exchange for safe passage. The message sent shockwaves through global political circles, with world leaders scrambling to formulate a response. Back at the rescue site, Randy had regained enough strength to sit up. He watched as Craxton stirred, her alien eyes blinking open. Their gazes met and a wordless understanding passed between them. They had survived something extraordinary together, forging a bond that transcended species. Dr. Rodriguez approached them, her face a mix of excitement and concern. "Randy, Craxton," she said, her voice filled with awe. "You've just made history, but this is only the beginning. Captain Zax has requested permission to land, and world leaders are in emergency sessions to decide how to respond." Randy looked from Dr. Rodriguez to Craxton, then to his father. He realized that his role in this unprecedented event was far from finished. As the only human who had spent significant time with a Xindi, his insights would be invaluable in the coming negotiations. "I want to help," Randy said, his voice growing stronger. "Whatever happens next, I want to be part of it." Craxon nodded in agreement, her alien features set in dedication. She spoke, her words translated by the device Lyra had provided. "I, too, wish to participate in these discussions. Our experiences together should inform the path forward." As if in response to their words, a sleek government vehicle pulled up to the site. A group of officials in suits emerged, their faces serious as they surveyed the scene. They approached Colonel Hartley, speaking in hushed tones. The colonel listened intently, then turned to address the group. "All right, listen up," he called out. "By order of the president, this entire area is now a temporary diplomatic zone. We're setting up a command center to handle negotiations with the Xindi." The announcement sent a ripple of excitement through the crowd. Scientists, diplomats, and military personnel began to converge on the site, transforming the once quiet mining area into a hub of international activity. Dr. Rodriguez, sensing the shift in focus, gathered her team. "We need to compile all the data we've collected on Craxon's physiology," she said. "This could be crucial for future interactions between our species." As the diplomatic zone buzzed with activity, a new challenge emerged. Reports began to filter in about a faction within the Xindi government that opposed open relations with Earth. This group, fearing the influence of human culture on their society, was demanding Craxon's immediate return and an end to all contact. The news cast a shadow over the proceedings, adding a sense of urgency to the negotiations. Randy, still recuperating but determined to help, found himself at the center of discussions. His unique perspective, shaped by his time with Craxon, became invaluable as Earth's leaders sought to navigate this delicate situation. Captain Zax's ship maintained its position in orbit, a constant reminder of the momentous changes taking place. As night fell, the diplomatic zone glowed with activity, the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance. Randy and Craxon, their ordeal in the mine behind them, now faced an even greater challenge, helping to forge a path toward peaceful coexistence between their species. The tension was palpable as world leaders grappled with the implications of open contact with an advanced alien civilization. In the midst of this diplomatic maelstrom, Randy found himself thrust into a pivotal role. His unique experiences with Craxon had given him insights that no other human possessed. As he recovered his strength, Randy spent hours in debriefings, sharing every detail of his interactions with the Xindi. One evening, as Randy sat with his father in a makeshift cafeteria near the diplomatic zone, an idea began to form in his mind. He turned to John, his eyes bright with excitement. "Dad, what if we could show the Xindi who we really are? Not just through negotiations, but by actually living alongside each other." John raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What are you thinking, son?" Randy leaned forward, his words tumbling out in a rush. "A cultural exchange program. We send a group of humans to learn about Xindi culture, and they send a delegation here. It could help dispel fears on both sides." The idea quickly gained traction. Randy presented his proposal to Colonel Hartley, who recognized its potential to break the diplomatic deadlock. Within hours, the concept had reached the highest levels of Earth's leadership. Captain Zax, monitoring the situation from orbit, received the proposal with interest. The progressive faction among the Xindi saw it as an opportunity to foster understanding and cooperation. However, the conservative elements remained wary, demanding strict controls on human-Xindi interaction. After days of intense negotiation, a compromise was reached. The exchange would take place on a neutral space station orbiting Earth, jointly constructed and operated by both species. This solution addressed the security concerns of the conservative Xindi while still allowing for meaningful cultural exchange. As plans for the space station took shape, Randy found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Despite his young age, his insights were invaluable in designing spaces that would accommodate both human and Xindi needs. He worked alongside engineers and architects, his experiences with Craxon informing decisions on everything from atmospheric composition to shared living spaces. The construction of the station became a symbol of cooperation. Human and Xindi engineers worked side by side, their combined expertise resulting in a structure that showcased the best of both civilizations' technology. As the station took shape in Earth's orbit, it captured the imagination of millions on the planet below. With the physical structure underway, attention turned to selecting participants for the exchange program. Despite fierce competition from adults with impressive credentials, Randy's nomination was met with unanimous approval. His unique bond with Craxon in his role in the First Contact event made him an ideal ambassador for humanity. John Scora, watching his son take on this monumental responsibility, felt a mixture of pride and concern. Determined to support Randy, he threw himself into the rigorous training required to qualify as a guardian for the exchange program. His background in industrial automation proved unexpectedly useful as he learned to operate the advanced systems that would sustain life on the space station. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had been at the forefront of studying Cindy biology, was appointed as the lead scientist for the human delegation. Her expertise would be crucial in ensuring the health and safety of the human participants in an environment designed to accommodate two distinct species. As the launch date approached, excitement built to a fever pitch. The space station, now visible from Earth as a bright point of light, symbolized a new era of interstellar cooperation. However, not everyone welcomed this change. 3 days before the scheduled launch, Randy and John were conducting a final inspection of the human living quarters on the station when Randy noticed something amiss. A panel in one of the corridors was slightly ajar, revealing unfamiliar wiring beneath. "Dad," Randy whispered, his instincts honed by his experiences in the mine. "Something's not right here." John examined the panel, his face growing grave. "This isn't part of the station's design. We need to alert security immediately." Their discovery triggered a full-scale security operation. A joint human-Xindi team swept the station, uncovering a series of explosive devices planted at critical junctions. The explosives bore the hallmarks of an extremist human group opposed to alien contact. As the team worked to disarm the devices, Randy's familiarity with both human and Xindi technology proved invaluable. He assisted in identifying potential trigger mechanisms, his young mind making connections that others missed. After hours of tense work, the last device was neutralized. The crisis had been averted, but it served as a stark reminder of the challenges that lay ahead in fostering interspecies cooperation. Ironically, the thwarted attack seemed to strengthen the commitment of both humans and Xindi. It demonstrated the very need for unity and understanding that the exchange program sought to foster. In the aftermath, support for the program surged on both sides. As final preparations were made, Randy received news that brought a smile to his face. Craxon, who had been recovering on a Xindi ship in Earth's orbit, had requested to join the Xindi delegation on the space station. Her request was granted, ensuring that the friendship forged in the depths of the mine would continue to grow in the vastness of space. The day of the launch dawned clear and bright. Randy stood on the launch pad, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He looked up at the sleek shuttle that would carry them to the station, then turned to his father. John placed a hand on Randy's shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. "You ready for this, son?" Randy nodded, his voice steady. "Ready as I'll ever be, Dad. This is just the beginning." As they boarded the shuttle, Randy caught sight of Dr. Rodriguez, her face set in commitment as she carried case after case of scientific equipment. The other members of the human delegation filed in, each chosen for their unique skills and open-minded approach to interspecies relations. The shuttle's engines roared to life, drowning out the cheers of the crowd gathered to witness the historic launch. As they lifted off, Randy pressed his face to the window, watching as the Earth fell away beneath them. The space station grew larger in the viewport, a shining beacon of cooperation against the backdrop of stars. As they approached the docking bay, Randy spotted another shuttle approaching from the opposite direction, the Xindi delegation arriving simultaneously. His heart leapt at the thought of reuniting with Craxon and facing this new adventure together. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud, and a hush fell over the human delegation. Randy took a deep breath, centering himself for what lay ahead. As the airlock cycled open, he stepped forward, ready to embark on a journey that would shape the future of two civilizations. Civilizations. As Randy stepped through the airlock onto Harmony Station, he felt a surge of excitement mixed with nervous anticipation. The station's interior was a marvel of human and Xindi engineering, with sleek corridors that seemed to blend organic and technological elements seamlessly. "Welcome aboard Harmony," a melodious voice announced in both English and the Xindi language. Randy recognized it as the station's AI, designed to facilitate communication between the two species. The human delegation moved forward, their steps tentative in the artificial gravity. Randy glanced back at his father, who gave him an encouraging nod. As they rounded a corner, Randy's heart leapt. There, at the end of the corridor, stood a group of Xindi delegates. His eyes immediately found Craxon, her alien features brightening with recognition. "Randy," Craxon called out, her translator device conveying her enthusiasm. "It is good to see you again." The reunion was cut short as Captain Zack stepped forward, his commanding presence drawing everyone's attention. "Humans and Xindi," he began, his words translated smoothly. "Welcome to Harmony. This station represents a new chapter in our shared history. Let us make the most of this opportunity." Over the next few weeks, Randy found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The station hummed with energy as delegates from both species worked to establish routines and bridge cultural gaps. Randy's unique experience with Craxon made him an invaluable asset in facilitating interactions. One morning, Randy led a mixed team of humans and Xindi in a maintenance check of the life support systems. As they worked, he noticed a Xindi engineer struggling with a human-designed interface. "Here, let me show you," Randy offered, demonstrating the gesture-based controls. "It's like this. Imagine you're conducting an orchestra." The Xindi engineer's eyes widened in understanding, its multiple appendages moving in a fluid motion across the interface. "Fascinating," it said. "The design mimics the flow of energy in our own systems." These small moments of connection and understanding became frequent as the exchange program progressed. Randy organized cultural workshops where participants shared aspects of their daily lives, history, and customs. In one session, a human chef collaborated with a Xindi nutritionist to create dishes that satisfied the palates of both species, resulting in a memorable feast that had everyone talking for days. However, not all interactions were smooth. Cultural misunderstandings led to moments of tension. During a joint exercise in the station's hydroponics bay, a human scientist accidentally pruned a Xindi plant considered sacred in their culture. The Xindi delegates were visibly distressed, their color-changing skin reflecting their agitation. Randy, sensing the growing unease, quickly intervened. "Wait," he said, addressing both groups. "This is exactly why we're here, to learn from each other. Can we use this moment to understand the significance of this plant and find a way to remedy the situation?" His words seemed to diffuse the tension. Over the next hour, the Xindi explained the plant's cultural importance, while the humans shared their own concepts of sacred nature. By the end of the discussion, both groups were working together to cultivate new cuttings from the plant, turning a potential conflict into a collaborative learning experience. As the weeks passed, Randy's role on the station evolved. Despite being one of the youngest participants, his ability to bridge the gap between humans and Xindi made him a natural leader. He found himself involved in everything from scientific experiments to policy discussions. One day, as Randy was assisting Dr. Rodriguez in the medical lab, alarms blared throughout the station. The AI's voice echoed through the corridors. "Warning, gravitational anomaly detected. All personnel secure loose equipment and prepare for potential gravity fluctuations." Randy's heart raced as he looked around the lab. Vials of carefully prepared samples and delicate equipment were at risk. Without hesitation, he sprang into action. "Dr. Rodriguez, the stasis field generators," he called out, already moving towards a rack of floating sample containers. As the gravity began to shift, Randy's experience on Earth proved invaluable. He navigated the changing environment with agility, securing equipment and guiding others to safety. His quick thinking and physical adaptability allowed him to reach areas that the Xindi, unused to such gravitational shifts, struggled with. In the midst of the chaos, Randy spotted a Xindi scientist floundering in the fluctuating gravity, unable to reach a critical control panel. Without hesitation, Randy launched himself across the room, using the erratic gravitational fields to his advantage. He reached the panel just as another gravity wave hit, threatening to send him careening into a wall of sensitive equipment. Gritting his teeth, Randy anchored himself with one hand and stretched out with the other, his fingers dancing across the control interface. With a final gesture, he activated the station's backup gravitational stabilizers. The chaotic motion gradually subsided, and a collective sigh of relief echoed through the lab. As the crisis passed, Randy found himself the center of attention. Both humans and Xindi looked at him with newfound respect. Captain Zax, who had been monitoring the situation from the control room, sent a station-wide commendation for Randy's quick action. The incident became a turning point in the exchange program. Randy's display of adaptability and quick thinking under pressure impressed the Xindi, particularly the more conservative factions who had been skeptical of human capabilities. It also highlighted the potential benefits of combining human ingenuity with Xindi technology. In the days that followed, Randy noticed a shift in the station's atmosphere. The barriers between humans and Xindi seemed to lower, with more spontaneous interactions and collaborations emerging. Dr. Rodriguez's research into combined human-Xindi physiology gained new momentum, with Xindi scientists eagerly contributing their expertise. As Randy sat in the station's observation dome one evening, watching the Earth rotate slowly beneath them, he felt a presence beside him. It was Craxon, her alien features softened by the starlight. "You have done well, Randy," she said, her words carrying a warmth that transcended the translator. "Your actions have brought our people closer together." Randy smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility and the excitement of possibility. "This is just the beginning, Craxon," he replied, his gaze turning back to the stars. "There's so much more for us to discover together." As if in response to his words, a notification chimed on his personal device. It was a message from Captain Zax, requesting his presence at a high-level meeting the next day. The subject line read, "Proposed Joint Exploration Mission." Randy's pulse quickened as he read the details. A nearby star system, previously unexplored by either species, was being considered for a joint human-Xindi expedition. And despite his young age, Randy was being asked to join the planning committee. As he looked out at the vast expanse of space, Randy felt a surge of anticipation. The challenges they had faced on Harmony were just the beginning. The true test of their newfound alliance lay ahead, in the uncharted depths of the cosmos. Galaxy. Randy's heart raced as he read through the mission proposal. The nearby star system, designated HD 4307, held promise for both species. Its 6 known planets offered a wealth of research opportunities, from gaseous giants to potentially habitable super-Earths. As he prepared for the meeting, alarms blared throughout the station. The AI's voice echoed urgently. "Attention, all personnel. Critical alert. Asteroid detection system activated." Randy froze, his mind racing to process the implications. He rushed to the command center, joining a gathering crowd of human and Xindi officials. Captain Zax stood at the center, his expression grave as he addressed the assembled group. "We've detected a large asteroid on a collision course with Earth," Zax announced, his words sending a ripple of shock through the room. "Initial projections indicate impact in approximately 72 hours. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity. Screens lit up with trajectory models and impact scenarios. Randy felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see his father, concern etched on his face. "This is what we trained for, son," John said, his voice steady. "Remember everything you've learned." Randy nodded, steeling himself for the challenge ahead. He caught Craxon's eye across the room, and they shared a determined look. Together, they approached Captain Zax and Dr. Rodriguez, who were huddled over a holographic display of the asteroid's path. "Captain," Randy began, his mind already formulating a plan. "I think I have an idea." Over the next hour, Randy outlined his proposal to the station's leadership. He suggested combining Xindi energy beam technology with human plasma drilling techniques to create a powerful deflector array. The plan was audacious, requiring unprecedented cooperation between humans and Xindi. "It's risky," Dr. Rodriguez noted, her brow furrowed in concentration. "But it might be our best shot." Captain Zax nodded, his multiple eyes blinking in rapid succession. a sign of deep thought in his species. Agreed. Randy, you and Craxon will lead the technical team. Dr. Rodriguez, coordinate with Earth and the Xindi homeworld. We'll need every resource we can muster. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of frenetic activity. The station became a hive of constant motion as humans and Xindi worked side by side, their previous cultural barriers forgotten in the face of impending catastrophe. Randy and Craxon found themselves at the heart of the operation, their unique understanding of both species' technologies proving invaluable. They worked tirelessly, designing and assembling components for the deflector array. As they labored, Randy couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. The scared boy who had once rescued an alien visitor was now standing shoulder to shoulder with that same alien, working to save not just one life, but billions. With less than 24 hours until projected impact, disaster struck. During the final testing phase, a crucial component of the deflector array malfunctioned, sending sparks flying across the laboratory. No, 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 Randy muttered, his hands flying over the controls. We're losing power to the main emitter. Craxon leaned in, her color-changing skin flickering with concern. The power coupling is completely fried. We don't have a replacement that can handle this kind of energy output. Randy's mind raced, searching for a solution. Suddenly, a memory flashed through his mind. The twisted wreckage of Craxon's ship, preserved in the station's research bay. Craxon, he said, turning to his friend with renewed hope. Your ship, it used a similar energy distribution system, didn't it? Craxon's eyes widened in understanding. Yes, but Randy, that technology is incredibly unstable. It's why my ship crashed in the first place. But you've learned so much since then, Randy insisted. We both have. Together, we can make it work. Captain Zax, overhearing their conversation, approached with a grave expression. It's too dangerous, the risk of explosive decompression alone. With all due respect, Captain, Randy interrupted, his voice firm. We're out of options and out of time. Craxon and I can do this. After a tense moment, Zax nodded. Very well, but take every precaution. We can't afford to lose either of you. Minutes later, Randy and Craxon found themselves suiting up for an emergency spacewalk. As they prepared to exit the airlock, Randy felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, the same feeling he'd experienced years ago, venturing into the forest to save a strange alien visitor. Just like old times, huh? He said to Craxon, managing a smile despite the gravity of their situation. Craxon's translator crackled with what sounded almost like a chuckle. Let's hope this adventure ends as well as our first one. They pushed off into the void, maneuvering carefully towards the research bay where Craxon's ship was stored. As they worked to extract the necessary components, Randy's helmet comm crackled to life. Warning, the AI's voice announced. Micrometeoroid storm approaching your position. Seek immediate shelter. Randy looked up, his heart pounding as he saw a cloud of debris hurtling towards them. Without thinking, he pushed off hard, tackling Craxon and using his momentum to propel them both behind a large piece of wreckage. They huddled together as the storm raged around them, the pings of impacts echoing through their suits. When it finally passed, they emerged to find the station's exterior pockmarked with new dents and scars. That was too close, Craxon said, her voice shaky even through the translator. Randy nodded, his own breath coming in short gasps. Come on, we need to hurry. They raced back to the airlock, precious components in hand. The next few hours were a blur of frantic work as they integrated the Xindi technology into the deflector array. With less than an hour to spare, they finally activated the system. The combined power of human and Xindi technology created a dazzling display of energy that stretched out from the station, enveloping the approaching asteroid in a shimmering field. For several agonizing minutes, the fate of Earth hung in the balance as the array strained to alter the massive rock's trajectory. Randy held his breath, his eyes fixed on the tracking display. Beside him, Craxon's skin rippled with a kaleidoscope of colors, a sign of intense emotion in her species. Then finally, the readout changed. Trajectory shift confirmed, the AI announced. Asteroid will miss Earth by a margin of 50,000 kilometers. The command center erupted in cheers. Humans and Xindi alike embraced, their joy transcending any remaining cultural barriers. Randy found himself swept up in a bone-crushing hug from his father, while Dr. Rodriguez wiped tears from her eyes nearby. As the celebration continued around them, Randy and Craxon slipped away to the observation deck. They stood side by side, watching as the asteroid streaked past in the distance, now just another light among the stars. "We did it," Randy said softly, still scarcely able to believe it. Craxon turned to him, her alien features softened by the starlight. "No, Randy, you did it. From the moment you found me in that forest, you've been bringing our people together. This is just the culmination of everything you started." Randy felt a lump form in his throat, overwhelmed by the weight of Craxon's words. As they stood there, looking out at the vast expanse of space they had just saved, he knew that this was only the beginning. The bond between humans and Xindi, forged in crisis and tempered by shared triumph, would lead them to heights neither species could have imagined alone. The future stretched out before them, as infinite and full of possibility as the stars themselves.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.